All right, I think it's my turn to take over. Welcome, everybody. I guess this is called day two. First off, thank you to Bjorn and the rest of the Ontario Soccer Association. Obviously, anytime you get a lot of soccer minds in one place, it's a valuable experience. It's incredible to, especially as ex-players, as someone who got to captain teams in both the Premier League, the MLS, and represent countries in a World Cup. It's important when you see that view of soccer in a macro view to kind of come back down to the micro view, and that is local soccer grassroots communities that all come together for really the development of the player. And that's kind of what this morning session is about. It's about grassroots development. It's about how we as coaches, how we as people that want to give back to the game, actually do that. How do we actually contribute? How do we actually create better programs? How do we actually create more of a grassroots environment so we can create opportunity for the large amount of kids? I mean, having over 300,000 players just in Ontario is not only impressive, but it also shows the amount of work that's there to do, and all the players that we can help develop to be players that can, be on time and find the intangible things that are going to make them great humans, whether they make it as a pro or not. So we know that today is about that, and today I'm here to introduce one of the greatest, grassroots minds in the game today, and that's Nick Levett. He's our keynote speaker for this morning. Obviously, being in grassroots myself for many years since I've been done over the last 7, working with O'Neill's, an incredible brand that has been around for 105 years. It's not the surf brand. They don't make board shorts. They probably will. But this is high quality Irish goods. I've been to their factories in Dublin. This is a company that's been around forever. It's good quality things. And not only that, but it's the people behind the brand too. People that care about the sport. People that want to help give back, not just in their garments and the way that the kids can play, but it's also like, how do you actually stand in front of that as a brand? How do you support those grassroots initiatives as a brand? And O'Neill's, of course, in my 3 years working with them, is the best in the business at that. So stop by the booth today, see the guys, and they're here with Ontario Soccer for the next few years, being a big part of this growth and development of the next generation. So again, stop in and say hi to them and me later. But today I'm here to introduce Nick Levett. He's got an impact that is unlike any other on the advancement of a lot of these grassroots initiatives. He's been helping people maximize their potential in sport, and he's also the architect of the long-term player development introduction. So that started in the UK. He's now working as a consultant in the space of player development. He creates pathways towards growth and success. And his knowledge in sport, coaching, performance has taken him all around the world, from Finland to Dubai. Again, seeing all of these systems all around the world that people are doing, and he's turned into the expert of that. And so today, Nick will be sharing his insights on the development around the game, followed by a panel discussion about what exactly the long-term player development 2.0 is about. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to the outstanding Nick Levett.
Morning. It's a lot of words in that introduction. And the one that kind of slightly scares me is the word expert. I saw the 2 keynote speakers that we had. We had Dr. Anne yesterday, or Velvet Anne, as I'm now calling her after her somewhat incredible jacket that she was wearing. And then Sunday morning. And 2 incredible women with doctorates and professorships and research this. I'm just a bloke who rambles about coaching. So it's somewhat in the middle of two absolute experts. The plan is this. We're going to have a bit of a wander through what's gone on previously in some of the world of player development. And we're going to end up in a space where we're starting to look at what the future of that might look like, and some things we still need to nail, and a little bit of the coach development stuff as well. Because when I kind of come to these things, the important part is change. Okay? It's change, because some of you have driven a long way to get here. And if you come here and you go, oh, that was a nice couple of days out, and you go back to doing what you've always done, like, that doesn't mean anything. The important part is what you take away and change in your practice. And none of the speakers can do that for you. That has to be something that you apply yourself. So, 2014, right? That was me at the coaching conference as it was. Who was here in 2014? Oh, quite a few of you. Okay. And I was talking then about what was going on in the world. And it's going to sound weird, but the selfie was a new thing, right? That was 10 years ago. I found the photo I took, right? I look as surprised as everybody else. But now it's just kind of commonplace. But that was 10 years ago. My journey has taken me into lots of amazing places. And spent a long time at the FA in England talking about player pathways, around coach development, around talent ID with the national teams, and then moved across into getting out of football. And I'm going to say football. It's been too long in my head to start saying soccer that short, but you know what I mean. And I spent 5 years in the Olympics world. And I would urge any of you, get out of just being in that football bubble and go and see some other coaches working. Because you will learn loads just about how they create an environment, how they work with other young people, how do they work with other coaches. And it was fascinating for me supporting coaches and working with coaches in lots and lots of different sports on a trajectory for the Tokyo Games and now off to Paris. And my world now takes me into some really, really fascinating places. And 2 weeks ago, I was on my bike, cycling in the belting down rain alongside a British canoeing coach who's supporting athletes to go to the World and European Junior Championships. And I'm learning loads at the same time. So where possible, get yourself out. But I was always really interested in other high performance environments, right? So some of the places on the right-hand side there. Spent time with Google, spent time with the Red Arrows. The Brit School is a place in Southeast London that's a regular secondary school in a tough part of London called Streatham, where you would often have police on the school gates at the end of the day because they had all sorts of trouble. But this secondary school has churned out Adele, Jessie J, Leona Lewis, Tom Holland, the Spider-Man actor, dancers on the Beyonce World Tour. They're doing something right in terms of developing talent. So where possible, get curious and get yourself into some different places. But I may have been into all of those, but that's what I do. Every Tuesday and every Saturday morning, I'm an under-10s football coach, right? I'm no different to you, that on a Tuesday night from 6 till 7, I want to survive and get through without too much grief from the kids. You laugh because you know it's true, right? This is my son here. I spend a lot of time speaking to the kids to get their input. I got home after coaching 2 weeks ago, and I said to Callum, what do you think? He went, Dad, you've got your favourites at Faygate, the club. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, who are my favourites? And he went, everybody but me. I'm like, shit, like, I've just got some live feedback from a 9-year-old. But if I don't think they have something meaningful to say and to contribute, it wouldn't help me get better at what I do. So they are what I do. They are a regular group of grassroots kids. This kid on the far right here in the Chelsea top, Harrison's been playing football about 2 months. He's a September the 2nd birthday. He's got size 8 feet. He's 9 years old, right? He forgot his boots one week. He wore mine, right? He is this much bigger than all the other kids. And he has got no idea what his limbs are doing. Not a clue. The kid in the middle here, Henry, probably the most talented. He's in the pathway at Brighton, in the football club there. He's also one of the smallest. And I have to deal and manage the difference in the group every week of Henry to Harrison. So I get where you're coming from. I get the issues that you're facing. So this is a bit of a whistle-stop tour on what's gone on and the change that we've created. What connects these three people? Your very own Matt from Ontario Soccer, Josh Vanderloo from Aussie Rules Football, and Harry Maguire. Other than amazing hair, what is it that connects those, right? That's what it was, Matt, right? Matt's experiencing the challenge of trying to create change. Josh Vanderloo, Josh called me from Australia and said, Nick, I know you've done a load of stuff in player pathways. I'm trying to change Aussie Rules Football. And it was in the Sydney Herald. Vanderloo knows nothing about competition. He doesn't realize that life is about winning and losing. And he dealt with all sorts of grief and has come back stronger for it. I would say Harry Maguire's done the same in an England shirt. Man United shirt will ignore that bit. But when he plays for England, he's dealt with so much stick and come through the other side. I went to a league meeting when we started to introduce what was changing the player pathway. And a league chairman said to me, I don't care what you say about 9v9. I've got a baseball bat in my car ready for you. Seriously, I can still picture him saying it. He was about 23 stone. I fancied outrunning him. But what we developed is a rhino hide to deal with change. Because change is difficult and it's tricky. Especially if the person that's receiving that thinks someone's telling me I've done it all wrong. It's difficult. But this is some of the stuff that we did over the years when we introduced the new pathway at the FA. What you've got behind me in that top left photo is a very young Gareth Southgate, who's a lot grayer now. He's had the England job. Gareth used to say that he was my warm-up man because we go around the country talking about this kind of stuff. And Gareth would open the door because he's Gareth Southgate. And then I'll then start to talk about what we wanted to do with the game. And we did loads of things like the picture on the left in the middle. So we had 10-year-old kids playing in full-size goals. So what I did is I got a goal company to factor up what it felt like for a 10-year-old kid in a full-size goal. And that's me stood in that goal. That's what it felt like for that 10-year-old kid. And we did a load of filming, and at St. George's Park, I got the groundsman to make a pitch the same size as what it felt like for a 10-year-old kid playing on a full-size pitch. And it was the size of 4 football pitches. I watched a corner from the regular grassroots coaches, and they couldn't even kick it into the penalty box. But that's what we were doing for little kids every week. And it didn't make any sense. But then I'd start to hear, well, you can't do it. It's not going to work. Okay, why is it not going to work? Well, we haven't got the pitches. Okay. I'll just mark them out in blue lines on the existing pitch. Can't do that. It will confuse the kids. Have you been into a sports hall where there's 15 court markings down and you say to the kids, we're playing basketball today, that's yellow. And the kids go, oh, cool. Like the kids work it out pretty quick. And it's just about finding solutions to do the right thing. But we also had a PR campaign, and we used the national press, we used social media, and I got thrown up on the TV. But it was about supporting people with change. That's ultimately what this was about. But this was an example about why we did it, right? So this is a league just outside Manchester, the northwest of England, and they were early adopters. They were bought in right from the start. So that's what they had. Under 10s, 40 teams, 400 kids, 10 roughly in each 7v7 team. What they found was the 7v7 team would merge with another 7v7 team. So then had 20 kids, which was too many. So some of the kids would stop playing. And they ended up with 300 players. Literally overnight, when they brought in a new player pathway, they found that that group of 7v7 as one team stayed together, and they massively increased their numbers. So we weren't losing kids from the game. And that league, since 2010, and it had 100 teams across that league at the time, that's got 1,000 teams in that league. Huge increases. This is the chairman. I said to him before I came, tell me about the difference it's made. That's what he said. But what do the stats tell us? So when we do some research about actions in games, what you can see there is pretty clear. Smaller formats give the kids more chance to do the stuff we want to help them get better at. It isn't a race to 11v11. Give the kids more chance to practice what we want them to get better at. For goalkeepers, same thing. They got a load of practice. Not surprising, smaller formats. There was no goalies in the 3v3, that's why there's no data on that. In the talent pathway, that's the girls on the left, boys on the right. Smaller format, increase the number of touches. It's not a race to the adult game. It's not. It's about helping them fall in love with the game to keep playing it for as long as possible. And we also changed the competition pathway. Okay? There's my son's team. Look how delighted they look about being given this. Look at Oscar at the back here, well pleased. That, in Oscar's world, that's a smile, right? Henry, not bothered. We came second to last in that tournament. And they got a trophy. And the kids come up to me at the end and said, why have we got this? We didn't win it. And I was like, I know. But we think, give the kids a trophy for turning up. And Oscar said to me, I quite like playing football. I would have come anyway. I'm like, I know. We don't have to give out trophies just for turning up. But we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to give kids a piece of plastic for not winning anything. So let's focus on what child-centered competition looks like. And that's then about us as adults as much as anything. And I quite like this quote because it's pretty much true. And I think we've gone through this over the last 10 years. Change is difficult. It's tricky. We have to make sure we focus on sticking to the plan. Once we've got a plan, stick to the plan. But we haven't cracked it. So here's the things now that we need to focus on still. For you in your clubs, with your teams, whatever role you're in, whether you're officiating, whether you're running the club, whether you're a coach, this is about learning. Right, let's get into it. Here's the first thing. It is mostly a collection of photos of animals that I thought were quite funny. All right? It is not going to be pictures or stuff of loads of content. But the messages are the important part. So there's the first one. Take ownership. It's on you. You've given up your time this weekend to be here to come and learn stuff. Take it away and implement it. Work with the people to implement change where you need it. You've got a superb team at Ontario Soccer. Use their expertise. You've got people in the room from the national governing body from Canada Soccer. Use their expertise. But take ownership. Drive the change because you need to. Whatever your role, get help from others. So, if you're a coach, what we know from a lot of coach research is going on a coaching course is not the biggest impact on your coaching. Getting out, doing it, practicing it, experiencing it will have a far bigger impact. But get somebody that can help you. Whether it is a peer and you can just start to share ideas on coaching, or it's somebody that knows a little bit more. So if you're an under-10s coach, Find the under 12s or 14s coach that can help you, that might have been through some of the experiences that you've had. Or if you're working with 12, 13, 14-year-old girls or 13, 14, 15-year-old boys, find an under 16, under 17 coach that's been through that, where you've got to deal with teenagers and they're annoying and you want to know how to deal with it. Find someone that's gone through it before you. Get some help, get some advice. Create networks of coaches. One of the best networks I'm part of, right? A friend of mine's a golf coach, and he used to have conversations with a football coach whose expertise actually was in disability football. And they used to meet for a cup of coffee and just talk about coaching. So Neil said, why don't we just invite some more coaches? So I'm now part of a coaches network in my county. There's 40 coaches on this. Once every few months, we come together, somebody brings the biscuits, we go somewhere and we just talk about coaching. And they're from all different sports. And it's brilliant. Create those networks to support others. But the game makes connections. So one of the best things for me that I was really excited about, knowing that I was coming here today, right, was in, I think it was 2002, 2003. So Matt Greenwood, what are you at Pickering now? I worked with Matt. Matt was a girls and women's development officer, and I worked in Northamptonshire as the county lead there. And we worked together 20 years ago. And the best thing was that he could come in and I could give him a massive hug. Because that's what the game gives you. It gives you connections. So I would urge you to meet somebody new. Don't just stick with the people this weekend from your club. Meet somebody new. And I hate doing that, right? I hate doing that. If you feel really awkward, that's okay. Here's your task, right? You're going to go and speak to somebody new. So you might have to turn around. If you know the person you're with, speak to somebody new. You're going to ask them one of those questions. You can pick anyone. Don't mind which one. They will share for 1 minute their answer to you. At the end of that minute, I'm going to blow a whistle because trying to stop 500 people ain't going to work. Then you're going to have a minute to share what you think on one of those. And then by the end of it, you might have met somebody cool. Go, off you go. Speak to somebody different. 1 minute. No? I think we're okay. Okay. Hello, Robin.
I'm Levett. Oh, you're mic'd up. It's so nice to meet you. It's funny because I was talking to you yesterday like you knew who I was, and I'm like, oh, I didn't actually introduce myself. I'm sorry. I've been working on a lot of summit stuff, but I haven't been in contact with you. So you're doing a great job.
Well done, grab a seat. Grab a seat. So you get people talking, all of a sudden this happens. But it's the best thing about these events, right? It's where the magic happens. The little things that really wind you up. In our kitchen, right? We in the cupboard, we have a little thing that we pull out with the bin and the recycling in. I don't know why, but my wife leaves the empty things on the worktop above the cupboard you just have to open to put it in the bin. Don't know why she does it. Still does it. But hey, there we go. So when you get to the breaks, go and meet somebody different. Use one of those questions. One of my favorite questions on those kind of things is, who's your favorite Steve? What's the best of all the cartoon cats? Anything but just start conversations. It's really important. That's what the game gives you. We still need to make sure we broaden how we judge success. Because success is not necessarily just the league table or the standings at the end of the season. That's one indicator. That's one indicator. We need to really broaden what that looks like.
You asked the same question last year. Okay. Do you get a promotion every year? No, right? So every year you work failure. Yes or no? No. Every year you work towards something, towards a goal. Right? We should to get a promotion, be able to take care of the family, to be able, I don't know, provide the house for them or take care of your parents. To work towards a goal. It's not a failure. It's steps to success. Michael Jordan played 15 years, won 6 championships. The other 9 is failure. That's a failure. No, not you. Yes or no? Okay, exactly. So why ask that question? It's the wrong question. There's no failure in sports.
And we're not in professional sport. Okay? Success for me is every one of those kids at the end of the season wants to come back and play next year. That's success for me. If I'm the reason that one of those kids stops playing, I failed. Never be the reason a kid stops playing sport, whatever the sport. So we have to start to think differently about what success looks like, because it's not just that. One of the kids, another Callum in my team, Callum is not very coordinated. And we were at training, and I was stood on side, and he was playing on the side of the pitch as a bounce player, and he just fell over twice with nobody there. All right? And I looked down, and I just started laughing, and he's laughing. And I said, Callum, what happened? He went, I don't know, I just fell over my feet. All right? But for me, success is he does that a bit less. Right? But I also know that the primary school PE program that he gets is not going to help him with that. Because in England, 95% of the staff are not PE specialists. They teach everything. And on their 4-year teaching degree, they've done 6 hours of PE training. And most of that is how not to break your neck when you do a forward roll and how to put away a trampoline. Right? They're not going to help Callum not fall over. So success for me is he keeps loving football and he can run a bit better. And when he does something and he has a massive beaming smile, that's the stuff that fills my heart with joy. not winning a league. Our team are, I would say, middle of the group, below average. I've got no idea how many games we've won or lost. I have not got a clue. For 6 weeks, the kids would come over at halftime and say, "What's the score?" And I said, 4-4. For 6 weeks. They had no idea. And then after the game, I'd ask different kids, "What was the score?" And I'd all get different answers. But the difference is this, right? Is 10 minutes after the game, they couldn't care less. Their life has moved on to something totally different about how much time they're going to get on the Xbox that afternoon and whether Ragash's birthday party is going to have cake or not. Right? Their lives have moved on. But for the adults, it's ruined our weekend. And we have to get away from attaching our ego to the outcome of a kid's football match. It's not about that. So think about what success looks like for you. I think this is my challenge every week, right? My challenge is to make that football experience the highlight of their week. So they come bouncing through the door to be there. Make it the highlight of their week, because we've got no idea what goes on behind closed doors at home. And you'll all have kids in your groups and clubs, right, where things might be tricky at home. My training session on Tuesday, kids turn up. We start at 6 o'clock. They never all turn up at 6. Sam has training with another club first, so he doesn't normally get there till 10 past. Harrison always leaves early because he's got Cubs at 6:45. Like, so the reality of grassroots. But as soon as they get here, they just go play a game. And they literally just play. No constraints, no coaching. And kids just catch up with each other. Because they've been sat at school all day, most of it being talked at. So just go run around, burn off some energy. Once they've done that, 8-9 minutes, they come in. And we do it every single session. Every kid has to tell me, what's the highlight of your week been? What's the highlight of your week been? And we get all sorts. I scored this goal, it went top bins on the playground at lunchtime. Okay, cool, yeah. I got this new Fortnite emote and it does, okay, cool, fine. But one week, Ethan said, my parents are getting divorced and they're splitting up. Right? That was in his highlight of the week. So it's not necessarily, in my eyes, a highlight being an amazing thing. It's what they want to share. Now, what that gave to me was a real insight into what might happen in Ethan's world in the next coming months. Dad was moving out. Dad moved back to his mum's. Dad had to find a place to live. Dad only sees the kids half the time. And I've never seen his mum because she doesn't bring him to football. So sometimes he'll be there, sometimes he won't. His behavior will be all over the place. But if I start battering him because his behavior is really poor, I'm missing the point. Because I've got a bit of an insight into what's gone on into Ethan's life. Isaac said one week, his nan's just died. And he shared that to the team. And one of the kids, Jackson, just gave him a hug. So nice. But what that does is it connects us as people. Because football is about bringing people together as families, as grown-ups, to help a set of young people grow into the world. The reality is they're never going to go and play like Jay, like Jason, at the top level. That's the reality, right? Because it's 0.0012%. And having worked in the talent pathway, I pretty much know my kids are going to struggle with it. But what we do is we help the kids grow into better humans, to be part of our community. But it's about adults coming together. Don't forget that. It's about adults coming together. My wife is 40 this weekend coming. And she went out last night with all the mums from the football club. I don't think she should have gone. I think she might be regretting it this morning. But it's brought people together. And my wife doesn't know people in the town that we live. It's given her a friendship circle. It's really important. Make it the highlight of their week. And my wife is an elite sports psychologist. She works in high performance sport. She'll be off to the Paris Olympics with the GB women's hockey team. And her background is in lots of different sports. She worked with England football team and the Lionesses for plenty of years. And one of the best things that she's ever taught me is the statement that she uses a lot, which is curiosity before judgment. Curiosity before judgment. Because very quickly, we jump as adults to making an opinion. This has happened, therefore it must be this. When I was at the academy at Fulham, we had a kid who used to travel, Tyreek, from, this won't make sense to too many people. Jason, you'll get this entirely as a Londoner. He lived in Edgware in North London. He used to get the tube from Edgware to the centre of London to Waterloo. Then he would get an overground train from Waterloo down to southwest London. And then he would walk from New Malden train station to the training ground at Fulham. All on his own at 9 years of age. The most streetwise kid you've ever met. And he rocked up one week, and Mark, the coach that I worked with at the time, went, "Mark, Tyreek, you're late again." I was like, "Whoa, hold up, Mark, hold on. You don't know what he's gone through to get there. He's had to get home from school, do dinner for his little sister, do his homework, get 2 trains and a walk. Like, the fact he's here is a result." So lead with curiosity. Value what kids have to say, because they will give us all sorts of insight. Lean into those conversations. So the picture there, like what we talk about, kind of walking a mile in their shoes. The world is just as we see it, as we have constructed it. It's not what everybody else sees. So start to understand somebody else's perspective. And what we know is that the environment influences the people around us. I reckon I could watch a team play and I would know how they're coached. And quite often you'll see teams, certainly at the younger age groups, or certainly, and then into the teenage years, flying around, crashing into people, being a nightmare. What a coach is like on the side of the pitch. Modeling that poor behavior. And I'm sure you know clubs that you play against, teams that you play against, coaches that you play against that model that kind of behavior. So model the stuff that you want the kids to think about. And the whole world influences and shapes the kids. Okay? Last season, under 9s football, my son is taking a corner. He puts his hand up like this. We've never done set pieces. There's a small chance it's going to get into the right area. Most of the time, he kicks it off the pitch. He goes to the other side and he does this. Like, his teammates don't know what's about to happen as much as he doesn't. But the game influences stuff. The other team had a free kick. He laid down on the floor behind the wall. What are you doing? But the environment influences kids. Here's some of my favorite tweets on this. I was saying to Jason earlier, one of the kids at Fulham, he took his T-shirt off and he had "Happy Birthday, Mum" written on it, right? I was like, "Is your mum here today?" "No, she's not here." Like, it's not on Sky Sports, this game. Like, I'm not sure what's going to happen. Yeah, probably not going to make a difference. But this goes on in schools. It's absolutely no different. They're seeing that now. Stop getting your school uniform muddy. This is my favourite. My child came off a sub, applauded, right? It's repeat subs. He's going back on, right? But what we know is the game will influence young people because what they see at the top level will filter down. Now, you just have to make sure you model the good stuff, right? And when you see whatever you're watching, whether it's Pep Guardiola or Klopp or John Herdman running up and down, waving their arms about, don't do that. Don't do that. You are not in the Premier League or the MLS. You're working with young people. So model the behavior that's good. Because I think we have to start to think about the narrative of coaching as leadership. Okay? For those of you that work and are managed by people, being micromanaged in your day job generally is not fun. Being told what to do, how to do it constantly, being micromanaged is not fun. So why do you then go and do that when you work with kids? Because if it pisses you off at work, it's a high chance it's probably going to annoy the kids. We have to start to think about what this looks like in a different way. That the narrative is about our team. It's not my team as the coach. It's about our team. And we do things together. And you get an input into shaping what this looks like. So start to flip what that looks like. Anyone know what that picture's from? If you don't, get down with the kids, because you're going to need to start to understand young people. That's the login screen on Fortnite. But you have to start to understand young people. Because young people today are not the same as how you were as a young person. The world is changing hugely. For the first time, youth will know more about the world in which they live than do their elders. Would that be fair? Yeah, good. That quote was in 1960. Every generation's the same. But we have to be really aware of how we work with young people. Because it now looks different. The generations that go through are all shifting and changing. What it looks like for millennials that started to think about having an input into what does the future look like in the planet. They care about things in a different way. They're less bothered by alcohol. Personally, I think that's a mistake of their generation. But things are moving. So my son, as a generation alpha, the world is different. How many of you know the meaning to all of these words? Right. Firstly, this is language that young people will use. You have lit drip today. Right. So if you hear the kids saying it, Jason said earlier about his son using Riz, right? Firstly, understand what it means. Secondly, don't use them. Don't. You are not a young person, right? And I know you will want to feel like you are close to them and part. Don't use those words. Just understand what they mean. And when they're talking about your drip, it's what you're wearing. And when they're talking about Riz, they're talking about charisma. And they often now shorten words to things in the middle. So just understand, but don't use them. So Generation Alpha, they are the most technological generation we've ever had because they have grown up in this. I saw it walking through the airport on Thursday. Kids, 18 months, 2 years old, sat on iPads in the pram, in the buggy as they're being pushed along. My son tries to swipe the TV. Don't work, mate. It don't work. But they are the most technological because they've grown up in that. They are hyper-connected more than anybody else. And when they say, I was chatting to my friends all weekend, not like having a human conversation through direct message on their phones. It's a different generation. They live doing their learning in different ways. Video is their most consumed source. And they're really thinking about what diversity looks like. And we talked about it last night through Velvet Ann. It was brilliant because it gave such a great insight about the importance of all sorts of diversity. But that's the world they're growing up in now. Independent in their decision making. They want an input into things that matter to them. But what we also know is their attention span and ability to concentrate has hugely decreased. Because I don't like this YouTube video, swipe. And everything is instant. And we know that creativity for them is different because they're not playing with toys anymore. They're not doing those kind of things. A few years ago, I went into a primary school and I sat down in an art lesson with a 6-year-old girl, and she was doing some drawing. And I said to her, "What are you drawing?" She said, "I'm drawing God." I said, "Nobody knows what they look like." She went, "They will do in a minute." No care in the world, none at all. But we have to keep fostering creativity in young people because we also know that socializing is down and they're not spending their time with other people. And that is one of the best things about the game. We bring people together, let them connect. Because we also know, because of the impact of iPhones, is loneliness is increasing. We know some mental health challenges, certainly on the back of COVID. Again, we're now more aware of them, but more prevalent in young people. Have to be really, really aware. Some of Jean Twenge's research in this area, really well worth looking at. I think we have to shift from where we started in long-term player development, where everything was all about the coach. Coach knows everything. The coach is king or queen. And everybody went, well, we have to be player-centered. And we flip it to the other side. We aren't player-centered. We're kidding ourselves. We're genuinely kidding ourselves. The kids turn up when they're told to be there. They know exactly what they're getting because you're doing it. You tell them what the practice is. You tell them what's happening next. We're not player-centered. And I think we have to find that middle ground where we co-create with young people. It's them and us. It's our team. Not always, but this generation wants an input into things. And I've definitely been there when I've said to the kids, how should we progress this practice? And one of the kids says, right, we should do this. And I go, that's a far better idea than the one that I had. Let's do that. Because kids will have great ideas. So start to co-create what those environments look like. It's not just about you as the adult. And don't forget what the purpose of sport is. It's about bringing people together from all sorts of different backgrounds. When I was at Fulham, came back after Christmas and said to the kids, what was your best Christmas present? Idris said, I got a calendar. Okay, cool, nice. Nikolai said, we went skiing over Christmas and we took the family chef. They are from very different worlds. But the best thing about the game is it's brought them together. So don't forget the purpose of sport. It's about developing young people to be the future citizens of this country. And I was doing some work with this woman. This woman's called Kath Bishop, Olympian. And I said to Kath at this talent event that we had for a load of Olympic sports, and I read out a list, and it was resilience, grit, adaptability, ability to coach your peers, thriving in a digital world, being a good learner, growth mindset. I said, if you had those things, what would have changed? And she said there was definitely athletes that she worked with that lacked those, and therefore they didn't go on and achieve Olympic success. And it's the same in all professional sport. That list of stuff is nothing to do with sport. That list has come from the Forbes Human Resource Council that talk about the skills that the future workforce of this world needs. Now, we're really lucky because we can use sport to develop some of those. And I think this started 10 years ago. Think about the players a bit more, but it's still an area to focus on. Don't forget what the purpose is. Last couple of bits. As coaches, think about how you develop skillful players. I don't think that fox did a load of footwork in ladders and then run up and down that path, just jumping, like trying to get the right height to get in that. I think that fox has gone, something in there smells good. I'm going to find the way to get in there. So the problem has been posed, and that fox has found the solution. I don't think they've done unopposed drills up and down the side, trying to develop the skills before they're allowed to have a go at what they want to try and do. So learn about skill acquisition. Don't just do what you've always done. Understand what ecological dynamics might mean, which is you create something in the environment and you allow the skills to emerge that you're looking for. It doesn't always have to be what's in my head as coach I'm going to download into Matt's head. We know that's not how learning happens. So think about how we develop more skillful players. One of the things that we have to think about is making sure that we do the right things for the right age at the right time. But I will always go back to STEP as the process for doing this. How do you change the space to help the players that you're working with? What happens if you make it bigger or smaller? Does it become more complex or easy? What are the technical changes that happen in the practice? How do we change the task? What happens if we change the challenge for the kids or the players that we're working with? What happens if we change the equipment? If you're working with goalkeepers, catching a smaller object is a lot harder than catching a massive object. I'll quite often with the kids, we'll play football with a rugby ball or an American football. Why? Because I know that Callum Slater can't shift his feet and adjust. And because a rugby ball and American football bounces all over the place, he has to keep his perception on the object that he's focusing on and shift and adjust his body to solve the problem that the game has created. It's deliberate and intentional, but it's creating the outcome that I'm after. And people, what happens if we change the people? What happens if we have a 3v3 or a 4v2? But make it playful. This is Legoland in Windsor. That's me when I didn't have grey hair. That's my son who's taken the slide as the way down because they've made it playful. If you are naturally really serious, recognize when you might need to step into a different space to be optimistic and engaging and chatty and social. Think about what the demands need at that time. I thought this was quite interesting. I'll flip them all up. This is the customer commitment at Google. So they've identified everything as their issue to solve. So if someone else is finding something tricky, they solve it. That for me is the same as us, right? Do one of those in your world. If you're a club and you're looking at the structure and the pathway, or if you're a coach, deal with the whole problem, not just one bit in isolation. I go back to this as my kind of final bit. Take ownership. Make stuff happen yourself. Above all, be nice to kids. Even if you're really annoyed because the team are losing, kids are probably trying their hardest. Be nice to kids. But you have to make stuff change. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to take a photo of that. And when you leave, or you're at coffee, share with somebody what you're going to do. What is it? I'm getting out of the way. I don't need to be in 500 photos. That was the change of pace, Anne, that we talked about. Right? What are you going to do that's different? What's the commitment that you're going to make? If I said you've got to change massively, that doesn't work. That's not how humans operate, right? This is about human performance. What are the small steps that you're going to take? That's me. And so if you want to get hold of me, it's a little bit about the stuff that I'm doing now with lots of different people. Feel free, drop me an email or message. There's no point sending me the asking for the presentation, mostly because it is pictures of animals. Cool, that's it, we're done. Who's next?
Thanks, Nick. I would now like to call to the stage Ontario Soccer Director of Development, Matt Ferreira, to introduce our panelists for the LTPD 2.0 Power Panel discussion. Matt.
Thanks, Chelsea. Good to be back. Good to see everyone. Things are in the full swing of it. Really thought-provoking from Nick, and really giving us a lot to reflect on and take forward what has been the last 10, 12 years on this journey with long-term player development having been driven through Ontario and Canada, and soccer as it's really the driving force of this across all sports in our nation. But now we're going to get into some other things with some of the great speakers we have lined up. So I'm going to shift gears, and with us today we have someone who's had a storied playing career through the different leagues and ranks through the UK as far as the Premier League. And he's now since gone on to do some philanthropic work, and also the last 7-8 years with FIFA, and now the chief of football development at Concacaf. So give a warm welcome to Jason Roberts.
Thank you.
Also with Nick and myself on the panel, starting his career with probably what seems like a long and distant memory, was the Toronto Lynx. And since that time, moving into different roles and administering the national teams of Canada Soccer, an 8-year stint in various hats at Saskatchewan Soccer after leaving our great province, but I know he took it with him in his heart. And now as the interim director of development at Canada Soccer, a warm welcome to Dave Nutt. My introduction won't be as fancy, so I'll be part of the panel as well. Matt Ferreira, one more time. And hosting us is Nick Levett.
we'll go with Matt, great hair. That's what we'll go with.
What are you saying?
I'm feeling attacked.
It's like a before and after, isn't it? It's like, it's just,
It's my future. isn't it?
yeah, absolutely, yeah. Right, so the plan is this, really. I'm going to just start the conversation. We'll go through a bit on player development, a bit of coach development. Jason will be thinking big picture in his world, systemic, organizational, some of the things that he's seeing across the whole of the region. And then we'll kind of break it down a bit more into some of the detail. That's the plan. If you have any questions, Velvet Ann did an amazing job of this last night, and I'm going to try, but you can use the app to send any questions through, and I will try and pick up some of those as we go through. So, but this is what we're going to start with. Matt, what is coaching?
It's a deep question. I think coaching for me resonates with the role, building on kind of what you highlighted earlier. It's that leadership role to nurture and support the individuals in our care to whatever goals that they're trying to achieve.
Dave?
For me, coaching is about creating an environment. And in our world, from a football, soccer perspective, it's about creating environments that are fun, they're safe, they're accessible, inclusive, and welcoming, and they're developmentally appropriate. And then aligned to that, facilitating and supporting the people in our charge to experience the game in the way that they want to. And I think coaching has a lot of different meanings. Coaching in a business sense, it's the same thing. It's about creating an environment for your people or your people that you're working with in a mentorship capacity to improve and to become the best version of themselves.
Wonderful answers. Let me say what's really interesting from my perspective, looking at my work with FIFA, my work with Concacaf, over 41 different countries here in the Concacaf region, is it means so many different things in different environments. When you have people who have access to these sort of networks, these wonderful presentations, these wonderful environments, you're able to capacity build and learn. But within our Concacaf region, only 7 countries have a coaching pathway. So for many coaches, they're learning whilst they deliver, but they're giving their time to try to make their environment better and to give opportunities to kids. So I think from what is coaching to them is just about being community leaders, just giving something back. And I think that's at its best what we see across our region.
I think the interesting bit that I took from all of that is no one's talked about the X's and the O's of a practice. They've talked about people, and we often forget and lose sight of that in amongst everything because we think it's about the X's and the O's. I think the reality is that you could go onto Google and put in soccer practices and you'll get 4 million hits. But the skill of coaching is that relation bit that you create with others, 100%. So then for you in the role now at Concacaf, what does a really good player development experience or pathway look like?
Again, you mentioned the word diversity. We have such a diverse region with Canada, USA, Mexico, and then we have Montserrat with 7,000 people on island. Or my country in Grenada, where we have 120,000 people on island, but 1 million in New York and 1 million in London. So the player pathway for us is very, very different. Certainly from our perspective as the Confederation, what we've invested in is creating competition to allow there to be some talent identification phase, for there to be an opportunity to develop talent. But I think we all know a confederation and a football association only has so much sway within that. So now we're working towards the professionalization of the sport, which gives access to young people to have a part of that sport. So whether it's grassroots football, and we're doing a lot of work with each of our football associations on a program with Generation Amazing, who are the outcome of the Qatar World Cup. And this is utilizing football as a vehicle for social change. using government support, using our football association support to make sure that people are getting access to it. Because whilst we may be talking about the elite level or grassroots or women's football or young boys football, the reality is for majority of young people in our region, they're not getting access to the sport. And that's the challenge that we're trying to address holistically.
And Dave, what about you from a national governing body perspective?
I think for me, what our big focus on right now is meeting, especially young people, where they are and where they want to be. So it's about creating an environment for children that they want to be a part of. What we've done traditionally is we've decided, you're an early developer or you're a strong player, you've played a little bit longer. So you're going to get a good coach, you're going to get a good training environment, you're going to be on the field 2, 3, 4 days a week, and we're going to give you an opportunity. You next to them may have an equal amount of passion, may want to train, but sorry, you're not very good right now. So you don't get a training environment. You don't get a good coach. You can only play once a week and maybe get a kick around on the weekend. So we create a situation where we really struggle to provide opportunities for all. And then we get to your point earlier, Nick, on the league structure. Now we get to 13, 14, 15, we need 16 players or 18 players to field an 11-a-side team. And we look around and go, well, we only started with 12. We've now got 8 left, and that's not enough for a team. So for us, I think what we're really trying to do is create as many really good environments for people to experience the game as we can. And then when you're there, create those connections, community connections, coach to player connection, player to player connection, where you want to stay involved. And to your point earlier, there's a great saying that young people in particular, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And think a little bit for those of you that are coaches, a lot of you probably players at some point, think back to who your best coach was. And I would bet you dollars to cents that the person you're thinking of, it's not because they were great in the 4-4-2. It's because they made you feel special. They made you feel supported. They made you feel a part of something. And that's probably a part of why you're here now. So can we create those environments so that more young people have that experience? Because I know why I'm up here. I think why my colleagues are up here as well. Probably why all of you are in this room. So when we are, long gone and our Riz is worn off, then there's going to be people here.
Stay away, stay away. You were warned, stay away.
There's going to be people replacing us in this room because of the experiences that all of you gave them. And to me, that's a powerful responsibility, but also a massive opportunity for us.
So then, for club level, what does great player development look like, Matt?
Tough act to follow after Jason and Dave's responses, but diving deeper, I think it's building on some of the social change aspects that Jason talked about. Our sport needs to continue to be accessible. It needs to be diverse. We need to make sure that we're making it possibility for more kids to play, and that leads into where Dave's discussion on the environments are going to be critical and going forward in alignment with some of the initiatives coming from our governing bodies throughout the various levels. The coaching convention coming online, empowering not just the frameworks, but then how do we go about doing this? How do we leverage the knowledge that exists in the networks across our great sport? And we haven't mentioned it yet, but the road to 2026, there's a fantastic opportunity here to tap into a global network of knowledge, expertise, know-how, and not to say that it's going to reshape everything we do, but that friction, that tension that comes from different ideas will start helping to empower our community, everyone here, and how you actually go about your business at the coaching level to support those kids who maybe have those lofty goals, who are holding their hand up at U8 because they're dreaming about being the kid at the corner flag on TV on Saturday and maybe pulling up and saying, Mom, I got you here. Happy birthday.
I'd just like to add to that point, because you mentioned grassroots coaching and standards. And I think, again, without getting to talking about a confederation and talking about the wider impact, is that the support that we've had from here in Canada in regards to our work towards getting a Concacaf coaching convention so that we can regulate and manage and promote and better develop coaching across the whole Concacaf region. I mentioned earlier that only 7 countries, Canada being one of them, have a coaching pathway, but for a majority of the countries in our region, there is no access to coaching education. So with the leadership of Canada Soccer, we've been able to have our coaching convention approved. And now we have 14 countries who have put forward letters of intent to be part of the Concacaf coaching convention, with Canada being one of them. Now, what this will do is an impact. It will allow coaches to have mutually recognized accreditation that allows them to be able to work and be recognized throughout the Concacaf region and hopefully move forward. You would have all hopefully heard of coaches who have qualifications from other confederations. We, I believe, have something to add to that. So with our coaching convention, the hope is that the opportunities for coaches here in Canada will be able to travel and be recognized as accredited coaches globally. That's the big picture that we're doing with the help of Canada Soccer.
And Jason, and to add as well, like that's the formal frameworks, and to kind of, I guess, attack your question more directly, Nick, we have the formal education pathway, but so much happens outside of those frameworks. And this will be a huge future initiative, I think, in Ontario and even in Canada, across the country in Canada, is how do we support clubs to drive maybe the semi-formal mentorship that's required within your coach development managers, your technical directors. How are they working with you on the Tuesday night, on the Thursday night, maybe coming to your Saturday or your Sunday match? But then even the informal, how do we formalize that, make that more of our staple? We're going to make this really Canadian, the Tim Hortons to talk about the match or how we're going to develop the player. That's something that I think if we can capture that and really build on that, that'll set us up for the next 10 years going forward.
Yeah, 2009, I think it was, I was sat on Brighton Beach with a colleague of mine, and we were talking about grassroots coaching, saying, right, how do we really help grassroots coaches? We had 35,000 people going through a level 1 every year, but we weren't really helping them. And out of that came a national mentoring program where I went to the Sport England, our kind of government body for sport, got a load of money from them. Me and my colleague went off to Finland, who had a national mentoring program. We took a load of lessons from them, and we came back and put in a program to support grassroots coaches. That was 2009, still going today, where a mentor would go into a club. Our clubs in the UK are a lot smaller than some of your clubs, but they would then give 100 hours of coaching support to that club. And they would just go and work with one of the coaches. And it's a bit like what we were talking about earlier on, that what grassroots coaches didn't want, they didn't want a level 4 professional coach, UEFA A license, coming in and working with them, because the reality of their world was too far removed. What they wanted was somebody like them. And Anne talked a lot last night about the people like me. And that's the same from a coach mentoring perspective. They want somebody like me that has a little bit more experience, that can give me a hug and say, it's all right, you're doing a great job. And here's a few things to think about. But that's probably, that fits in that informal development part that's just so important. So for you as a coach, if you don't have anything nationally, where do you go for that? Make sure you create those networks of support in order to do that. It's really important. Dave, what are your great coaching deal breakers? The ones that you go, you must have these in your process or your environment.
Great question. For me, it's the opportunity to make connections. Early on in my coaching journey, I had a coach education session, formal piece, not the development process. And I remember the sage on the stage saying, I don't deal with parents. I come, coach the kids, I get in the car and I go home. I've got a manager that does all that stuff. And at the time I'm thinking, okay, well, that sounds right. You know, parents are difficult. They can be challenging. They have demands. They all think their kids are great and that we're there to support their development and put them into national teams. And then I actually started coaching and realized they're your partners, because what they really want most is a great experience for their child. And for me now, that opportunity, I coach, like you, Nick, I coach my daughter's under 13 grassroots team. So like all of you, I'm a grassroots coach. I'm learning a lot about the language. We have okay performances on the field, but top class TikTok and Insta feeds. We have great hair, other than myself, on our team. And sometimes we play decent football. But for me, the thing that really is the deal breaker is I've got a great group of human beings. The parents are fantastic. They're friends now, people I didn't know at the beginning. The girls, we get together, we watch games on TV, we go out and have a good time. And that resonates to the experience on the field because they want to come back and be a part of it, not because we're teaching them to be great footballers, but they're a part of a community. We were at a tournament a couple weeks ago and had a big final. A team doesn't win many games, so getting to a final was a big deal. Team we were playing against had recorded the match. They were doing some analysis and getting ready for us on Sunday morning. We had karaoke night with the parents in our team room, and the girls all performed, a little talent show, parents performed, and it was a blast. We had a great time. And, should have maybe done some match analysis because we didn't win the game on the Sunday, but the experience that we had that weekend is the thing that the girls are going to carry with them. The parents are going to carry with them, and it really sets the stage for us to have that group of 14, 15 girls playing together as women when they're 23, 24, becoming coaches when the time is right and they have their own kids, and creating that same environment that we've created for them to be able to carry that forward. So that ability to make connections for me is really the deal breaker. We need the opportunity to connect with people because that's what it's about. That's why we do this.
One of the coaches that I'm friends with is a British canoeing coach. He works with 2 paddlers that will be at the Olympics in Paris. And I was speaking to one of his athletes. And bear in mind that this lad has won world, European, Olympic medals, like the best of the best. And I said to him, tell me about Craig. What's he like as a coach? He said, all he does is he focuses on making memories. And how nice that is as a phrase. And what you're saying there is exactly that. But he's doing that in Olympic sport. He's focusing on making memories. And that's exactly that. The players will remember that for years and years, right? Yeah. Great coaching deal breakers for you, Matt?
I think systemically we're in a challenging space that we've been navigating for a long time. We're developing professional infrastructure on the technical side and a heavy reliance on what the amateur space, I use that in air quotes because there's a lot of esteemed professionals and hardworking people throughout our province and our country in this room. It's how do we find that balance? How do we empower those coaches that are able to meet the players at their needs based on where they want to go, but not losing any on the way that Dave's talking about? How can we still have the knowledge, expertise to support their ongoing development, but still make the environment positive so that everyone wants to come back, but not lose the 1% as we talk about? And it's a tough balancing act. I don't know we've quite found the solution yet, but or I have a straight answer for it, but we're working on it, I would say.
Okay. And Jason, from your view in terms of what you've seen over the last 7 years in your roles at Concacaf, how have you seen things change and develop around player development across the region?
I think, first of all, the idea that we're focusing on the areas of coaching education. There's no doubt a good coach provides a better environment. And for a majority of grassroots coaches, that's the most important thing. To your point, Dave, is how do you create environments that makes them want to come back? And how do they get all the intangibles of being part of the sport? Our recognition of that is what we're doing through coaching education. But at the same time, we recognize that the access to the sport is the most important part. So from a systemic standpoint, we're looking at implementing a grassroots charter, which will incentivize a majority of our countries to put in place standards and best practice around grassroots. What's really empowering for me to be here today is to see so many people investing in themselves and creating a network of people who are part of the grassroots environment. Because anyone here who's been part of playing the sport, you know how important that is. The fact that many of our environments don't have those networks, don't have those opportunities. That's why we think by creating a grassroots charter, we can incentivize more of our countries to invest in this sort of network and this idea of giving access to more people.
Brilliant, great. I'm just going to kind of dip into some of the questions here. Dave and Matt, I think this is probably coming your way, so just dodge this one, Jason. If part of coaching is about building better learners and abilities to acquire skills, How can we best use our minimal time with players to prime them for learning so that they can learn at a faster pace and improve even when not in our environment?
Great question, especially for a Saturday morning. I think one of the things and one of the challenges, and it's not unique to Canada, it's not unique to soccer, that we face is the decline in free play. So Nick, you mentioned in your presentation, spending a lot of time on our screens, a lot of time, you know, on the text with our friends, less time like we did when we were young, playing in the park. So that means when kids are doing football or soccer, it's generally when they're with you in formal senses. So how do you create an environment where you can allow them to explore and learn as well as you possibly can in those limited contact hours? Because the reality is those that go on to play at a level that Jason has, that Jay has, I can imagine you did a lot of stuff on your own. You were at the park, you were putting that work in. That's where the repetitions came. That's where the isolated technical work was when you were on your own or you were in game situations with friends on the playground. Because kids aren't doing that, we need to try to replicate some of that in our training environments. And I think one of the key pieces and one of the takeaways, and you had mentioned in your presentation as well, Nick, around constraints-based learning and ecological theory, this idea of creating games where kids can solve soccer problems. So the old style is we wanted to solve the problem for the players that are with us. Okay, stop, stand still. In that situation, here's what we should do. We want you to play it around the corner, or we want you to knock a ball backward in order to play out the other side. What we need to do now is create people who are able to learn and be adaptable and solve soccer problems on their own. Because ultimately, when we're solving the problems for them, we're not creating that learning environment where they can figure things out. And some of that comes back to the idea that learning is messy. And as coaches, we all want learning to be clean. We know the parents are up there watching our session, so we want the cones to be perfect. We want kids running in patterns that all looks good, and wow, this must be coaching because look how clean it is. That's not learning. Learning is messy. And you're gonna come out going, ooh, I wonder what they thought up there. That looked like a disaster. But were the kids learning? Did they figure out those soccer problems? And I think because of the limits on free play and the fact that we aren't seeing that problem solving in other environments, even the school system, it's a very top-down, dictatorial, authoritative approach. Here is how you solve the math problem. We need to create environments where we empower people to solve problems, because ultimately, both whether you become a footballer, whether you become a coach, whether you go into your life in the business work world, you need to solve problems. And if we always solve the problems for them, we never give them that opportunity, and we take away their ability to learn and express themselves and be creative and find, like you said, Nick, great ways. So maybe we aren't playing around the corner there. Maybe I'm going to flip the ball over my shoulder and spin out. If we solve the problem for them, they never figure those things out and they can't solve it themselves.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dave. If you could just bottle that answer and then get it into every coach's head in the world, that'd be helpful. Matt, maybe one for you then. So has LTPD been successful? So we're now 10 years on. What kind of successes are we starting to see?
I think well, Nick, one thing we'd have to try and define what those successes are, like how are we measuring it? How are we going about it? Despite I guess I'll start with looking at player retention. Despite some of the challenges we faced, I won't even name it, in the past 3 to 4 years, the game's rebounded. Our player levels have since surpassed those of 2019. So the game is back. It's growing. I expect it'll continue to do so over the next 2 to 3 year cycle as we lead up into those major events. And as long as we continue to make sure that those formats, not just the competition elements, but the training formats, are relevant to children, they're smaller in pieces, as you highlighted in the keynote earlier. They get more engagement. They're on the ball. They're passing it. They're scoring more goals. They're taking more shots. They're going to keep coming back. And that's an element that we want to keep building on. We've reached a peak with that, and there's some considerations for the future. But even when we look at other programs that have come to life, our national teams have had unprecedented successes in the last few years, with gold medal on the women's side, a qualification that we haven't seen for the World Cup, making it to the big stage in the party in the men's game since 1986. And a huge testament to many in the room, because almost 80% of that men's squad and the women's squad are coming from this province that started that journey back in 2012. Yes. And that's again, a credit to everyone in the room. So I would say we're seeing those successes even in some of our marquee programs where we look to, again, blur those lines of professional and amateur with the Ontario Player Development League and trying to elevate standards into our ecosystem. We're seeing growth in coaching, more diversification of coaching, despite, I know we talked women's coaching still at 7%. It's shockingly low, but in the OPDL framework, it's almost 40%. So these vehicles are driving some of those even social changes that we're looking for, which is incredibly powerful, as well as coaches, more licensed coaches than we ever have. Jumping all over the place, but there's multiple successes we can really pull on. It's now, we've reached this peak. I think what we're trying to dive into and maybe set the framework for and the introspection for is what's next? What is the next mountaintop we need to climb to? Because you can't stay here for long.
Yeah, one of the questions actually was linked to how do we evolve long-term player development? I think the short answer is that we'll never get there. You know, we'll constantly be needing to evolve it. And the moment you think you've got there, everybody else goes past you. So you have to, and the one thing that we know about this world is the only thing that's consistent is change. So you do have to keep evolving it, but the strides that you've made over the last 10 years have been superb. And from what I see around the world, around coaching, around player pathways, what you're doing in this country is top drawer stuff. The other thing that I would probably say is, it's going to sound strange coming from me to say this right now, but you've got some incredible people on your doorstep doing amazing things in coaching in the world. There's a guy called Joe Baker who worked at this university. I think he's just changed roles. Joe Baker is probably the world leading authority in talent ID. And he's like on your doorstep. Jean Cote is a world leading person around coaching and talent development pathways. And he's on your doorstep. But we used to do it at the FA for years. We would bring somebody in from Belgium or Germany that had a different tracksuit and a slightly different accent, and they said exactly what we were saying. But for some reason, then people go, oh, that must be right then. But you've got incredible people doing incredible stuff here. And every conversation I've had with Dave and Matt just makes me know you've got great people doing stuff here. So don't forget that as we always look to think we're not doing a great job, because you certainly do. And I want to finish with one, I think it's probably more of a statement than a question that's come in. So I think, again, it sums it up a little bit. I've coached a number of sports over the years. Currently, I'm an Ontario match official. It occurred to me in this session that the definition and reasons for coaching are the same reasons why I officiate. Giving back to sport, encouraging, motivating, educating diverse athletes, and also instilling a love of soccer for life. You're in the room because what unites you is your desire to kind of help others. And you don't get told it enough, but thank you for what you do for young people and everybody else around you. And they won't necessarily all come and tell you, but if it wasn't for like the thousands of hours that people in here give up to support their opportunities to come play the game and give them the opportunities for stuff that's, you know, given us loads and loads of years of fantastic experience that's helped us make memories as well. But if it wasn't for the people like you sat here looking this way, they wouldn't get that. So from them, thank you for doing what you're doing. I'm also really conscious that Bjorn gave me a 10:40 hard finish, and I've pushed it to 10:40. So Bjorn, I'm on time. Don't tell me off. But also just to say, look, you've got three incredible people who I'm sure will be around for the rest of the day. Please make sure you tap into their knowledge and wisdom and ask them lots of questions, including who their favorite Steve is. So enjoy the rest of the conference.